Dude, anybody over 70, I'm not a fan. Like, it's like, I saw ageism. Okay, it's ageism, but I mean,
but they hold so much wisdom.
yeah, no, but they can't exact that
There is
wisdom.
a curve.
Yeah, they can't. You know, the myelin sheaths are off of their nerves. Like, like no more ability to conduct electricity with their bodies.
They're playing a different game.
Yeah, it's
That's
weird.
Awesome.
Cool. So, yeah, ready to rock or what? Let's do this, shall we?
Oh yeah, let's get into it.
Roll the intro.
So, Michael, are you controlling everything, or is Kevin? What up?
Yeah.
Welcome everyone.
How's it going, Bitbrains?
Podcast episode 4 now, babies. Let's do this. Excited.
Consistency where
it's the episode where I have a frog in my throat. So pardon that for everybody.
Oh, Dom, you feeling better? What's going on?
I don't know, just a lack of sleep, I think, this week.
Too much alien watching.
Too much what?
Too much aliens watching.
That's too. You know, we're living in some interesting times with all of the stuff to discuss. So let's actually dive into it. I mean, we had there was Twitter. We woke up one day and Twitter wasn't Twitter anymore. It's called X, right? I was well, all of a sudden the logo and all my tabs is changed. Is totally a confusing thing to me. Almost felt like I was in another role, another paradigm. So
you guys think he was planning that from the beginning, or it was just an overnight decision?
I had heard that there was talk about it, rumblings about it, right after he took over Twitter. Like, he had this thing called X even back in the PayPal days that he wanted to resurrect, and he never had an opportunity to really turn PayPal into X, from what I had understood. So now this is his opportunity. So I'd heard about that right when he took Twitter over. So maybe that's got a little something to do with it, but we'll see what it actually turns into. What do you guys think about the whole rebranding?
Yeah, Elon Musk had the domain for a long time. There have been only 5 or 6 single letter domains with .com or .net, the OG ones. There is i.net, q.net.com, x.com, x.org, z.com. So these single letter domains are highly valued. Amazon has a.co, but it's not a com. So Elon Musk had the foresight to be able to buy this domain x.com, which is very valuable. And at the same time, they have destroyed all the brand value that they have been building at Twitter for the last decade or so. So it's x.com is a great domain, great brand. And at the same time, I don't know if it is worth destroying the brand value of Twitter.
Yeah. What do you also think too, or any of you guys, about? To me, it sounds like what he's doing is something. He's imagining something bigger than just the digital town square, right? Which Twitter is, right?
I think it's more to do with like an update, essentially, an update of the brand, an update of the values. That his vision is no longer Twitter, right? Because Twitter was one thing that not everyone liked it. And now he has introduced so many new features already. Like, you can monetize your tweets. You can do like videos on Twitter. You can write more than 200 and I don't remember how many words. And since like on the inside, it's no longer Twitter, might as well change it on the outside. And I think, honestly, I like the name change. I like how everything is looking. I feel a little sad for the bird because like Twitter, was like the little bird, and the tweet is what the bird noise is. And what is it going to be called now, right? But I actually like it.
Yeah, the tweet has become a lexicon, right? It's like we refer to things, short messaging, as a tweet, right? So there is some kind of loss of that. I do have an agreement with you, however, Mariano, because it's almost like Twitter or X is becoming bigger than Twitter, like the functionality of it. Now you're seeing other kind of influencers that are coming that are starting to do more media, right? More video, that are bringing their communities to Twitter. So it's a little bit more comprehensive. And then also I think that he has plans to embed the whole peer-to-peer digital payment structure as well. So I think that was maybe a reasoning for it as well. But interested in hearing anybody else's thoughts on that.
I wonder if Twitter is worth more now or less.
He took it private, so I'm wondering if
right, but like if he would be like to sell it or to launch it again into the open market, would it be worth more? I think so. I mean, but
I think it's worth less right now, but I think it will be worth more in the future if he plays his cards right.
Why do you think it's worth less?
Just because, again, the brand value is so destroyed over time. Just because he got this domain X, it's not going to add value. I think a lot of attention got shifted to Threads, even though I do think that's temporary. I just don't think anyone would pay for it at the moment. So, I mean, are you saying relative to what he paid for it, or relative to what it was?
Well, I mean, like, because Twitter now has a lot of more of revenue generating sources, such as, the verified button, all the new attention that is receiving that compared to before, right? It updated a lot of things.
Yeah, but last I heard, there's not that many people like using those features relative to, I mean, how many people had a blue check before? A lot of those people aren't willing to pay, right? But it's definitely giving rise to a new set of content creators. And I just think it's going to take time to accrue that value again, to build that brand up. That's all.
I think it will. I think it will do well. I think that it's actually a pretty savvy move on his part. And I believe that long term, it's funny because when he first come out with this and he calls Twitter a nonprofit, right? I thought that was pretty charming and pretty funny for him to pay $56 billion for a nonprofit. So, but the fact that he was willing to kind of poke fun of himself a little bit for doing that, I think is endearing. That being said, I think what's happening right now is it's a complete restructuring, right? We're going to have to go through a period of time where Twitter restructures into X, forms kind of an understanding of brand presence, a new brand presence based on the new features, based on the new functionality, maybe payments as part of that. It's almost kind of like a WeChat, like functionality of a WeChat that they have in China and Asia that he's trying to bring here. And if he can pull that off, I mean, WeChat's one of the most successful apps in the entire world. So if that's what his standard is and that's what his goal is, and he can achieve even a fraction of that, he'll absolutely crush it. He'll make it tremendously valuable.
Yeah, there are different principles of how these apps start. If you look at WeChat was more of a one-to-one functionality, and they have a one-to-many functionality. If you think about an app like Twitter, the primary functionality is not one-to-one. The primary functionality is one-to-many, where you can just broadcast your thoughts, and it doesn't fit well with the whole payment side of it. WeChat, one-to-one app, I could see it evolving into the super app that can support any kind of payment. And now there are apps built on top of WeChat. Everything happens on WeChat in China. We haven't had a super chat in the West. And at the same time, I don't know if Twitter or X has the capabilities to evolve into that. One of the thesis for people investing in FTX, one of the VCs was that FTX could be a super app, right? So a lot of people have been thinking about the super app and not sure which direction it's going to come from. And there are also cultural differences for how the culture between China and the Western world is. In the Western world, people just want to have distinct apps. Even if you look at Facebook, they had Facebook, they were going to make it into a super app, but people got confused. So for Facebook, they split it into separate apps, right? So you have Facebook is one app, Instagram is another app. Even Facebook Messages is a separate app, and Threads is a separate app. So all these are like individually siloed apps, as opposed to having a super app.
I think that's pretty interesting, Vijay, the way you bring that up. That is going to be something that he's going to have to overcome, this whole one-to-one, one-to-many thing. And I wouldn't bring this up if you hadn't brought it up, but you mentioned FTX. So there's been some news with FTX and SBF recently with the whole like DOJ dropping the campaign finance charges on SBF. So do you guys, any of you guys have any comments about the fact that he paid off all of these donors and now he's kind of receiving the benefit of that very, very quietly, might I add?
Well, the DOJ has a bigger fish to fry, and it's more of a technicality. Bahamas is saying that they didn't extradite SBF for violating campaign finance laws. They just extradited him for all the charges related to FTX as such. So I think they have bigger fish to fry, and this is might be confusing.
Yeah. So, okay. So he's effectively, they're saying that it's because the Bahamas did not extradite him for those particular charges.
Yeah.
I get that. I just hope that he actually does fry for all the other charges that he's got coming his way. So it might be one of those things where it's like, okay, we'll slap your wrist for this thing, but we're gonna harpoon, put a harpoon through your chest for everything else. So
is there any like update regarding the actual funds that were recovered from FTX? Because I found something very interesting, that there were some people that they were selling like a securitized version of their like right to recover certain assets, and they were charging it like 70 cents on the dollar. I might be wrong with the actual number, but do you guys know, like, is there any update with those things?
Yeah, we got a notice recently for being able to claim. But other than that, there hasn't been any update on that. There was an exchange which was supposed to launch where they give a token that is for the same amount of claim that you have on the FTX exchange. It's a good way to bootstrap the initial liquidity. And I don't think they ever launched.
I'm surprised that if that's the case, that it is 70 cents on the dollar, that it's that high. They actually think that they can get 70 cents on the dollar from FTX after all the attorneys and liquidators and all them people take their fees. 70 cents seems extraordinarily high.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, that's wild. Didn't they invest in like some AI company with the FTX money?
I mean, they invested in a lot of companies, right?
Yeah, I know, that's what I mean. He invested in a ton of companies, but he managed to hit a banger and make a bunch of the money back. Is there any like news on that? I heard about this like some months ago, I think. I don't know if you guys have any info on it.
I don't. But I also think another good investment was, campaign finance. That was a good investment, obviously. So, okay. Well, there's also, let's see, Mariano, I believe there's also a little news going on in your part of the world, right? With some influencer all of a sudden finding up in a suitcase.
Well, really two news. First of all, that the announcement that NASA made, the director of NASA made, that they will actually produce a report about these UFOs that are appearing, and that will happen in 1 month. Has been done in Argentina. So point for that on the good side. But on the bad side, so a pretty like well-known crypto influencer was found killed and dismembered in a briefcase in multiple like locations, like tiny bits in multiple locations. And I don't know, like it was well known that this guy, like, it was kind of like a scammer, not a scammer in the sense that he created like rug pulls or things like that, but more in the sense that he just received money to invest on buying Bitcoin, and he never invested that money. He just like kept it. And the people that gave him that money was like shady people, to say the least, like mobs, like people you don't want to really receive money from. And that's what happened.
So he essentially rug pulled the mob, and that's why he's spread amongst.
They essentially searched his phone, and he scammed so many people that it's hard to actually like track or decipher who could be the one that killed him, because he had received like apart from what I read, he received death threats from 249 different persons, like different organizations.
Oh my
How can
God.
you even like sleep like that? It was it's
Were
insane.
you one of the 249 or whatever?
Fortunately not.
I don't think Mariano's unsophisticated enough to have given him access to your custody.
He's like a regular Bernie Madoff, this guy.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
But
But
last week we had a guy in Toronto. He called himself the Crypto King, kind of the same vibe. He found himself beat up. This one of the people whose money he took ended up hiring some goons, and they beat him up. But they ended up catching all these guys who beat him up, and they actually ended up charging them. So these guys are all getting in trouble for it, and he's at the moment getting a slap on the wrist. But he looks pretty bad. So yeah,
it's interesting, right? Because like I've been rug pulled like quite a few times, and I always wonder like, do anything happens really? Like, because I'm a pretty like normal person, and if I get rug pulled, it's like I get angry, maybe I will file a complaint. But I'm sure there are people that will be like really, really insane and will take like revenge. It would destine the rest of their lives to find that person and do something bad with them. And I'm sure that happens.
You rug pull the wrong hombre, and you're gonna get I mean this is what happens, right? You get found in multiple different suitcases. So, like I'm not encouraging violence to be at any stretch of the imagination, but if you're gonna
but if you mess with my coins, Dominic, if you mess with
upfront 249 people and you're gonna scam 249 people, I mean, there's something psychopathic about somebody who's willing to do that.
And those are just the death threats, not even
those are just the death threats. Like imagine how many more, right? So
and it's insane that like you have the guts to do it in Latin America. If you're gonna do it in Switzerland or somewhere like more safe. You're gonna do it here.
No, probably it won't happen because the justice system, people respect it, right? They respect the laws. And a lot of these pretty brutal stuff happens because people have lost faith in the justice system to deliver justice.
Yeah,
indeed, absolutely. Well, another topic of consideration that I think is, important to discuss is, bear market, NFTs, right? NFTs were all the rage not that long ago. So one of the top communities is Bored Ape Yacht Club. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, Michael, question to you is I know you're pretty in tune to that community. Have you heard anything as far as what they're building? Is any strong narrative kind of leading into the next bull market for this specific community, or any NFT communities that you're liking that's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, like NFTs seem to be at like an all-time low activity wise, and the Bored Ape price definitely fell with that from like, I don't know, it was the highs of like 200 or so ETH down to, I think they hit like 30 ETH or sub 30 ETH. I'm not even sure, but as we've said before, these companies have massive war chests. They got tons of money, and they're just heads down building. So they had a metaverse experience some months ago, but their main focus as of late has been Ape Fest coming up in Hong Kong. And people are just kind of waiting to sign up for that. Anyone who has an ape gets to like go for free, but they're going to open up tickets to the public as well. So it seems like it's going to be like a multi-day, multi-block, giant ape brotherhood hangout. So we'll see how that goes. I have no idea if I'm going to go myself. And then the other thing is they had this rollout over the last like 6 months where you've played a series of games. So there's like, you get like a sewer pass, and then you're riding in the sewer, basically collecting points, trying to get a high score. And that ended up turning into these heavy metals, HVMTL robots. So you get these little robots that will float around, and you can basically play this passive game where you get to build up your, what they call a forge. You get to get points and get other people who have forges to vote on you with their points. And then you get to upgrade your heavy metal machine. And I don't know where that's going, but it's just this passive game that they have going on right now. And what else do they have going on? Oh yeah, they just announced made by Yuga, or like made by apes. So it's basically the ability to license the Yuga brand, and I guess one of the apes. identities for your own marketing and branding. So they've just like they have so many different licensing deals right now that they decided to streamline the whole thing with madeby.yuga.com to basically have an application process. So yeah, they have drinks, food trucks, clothing brands, wines, all sorts of stuff with Yuga branding now. So that's pretty cool.
Interesting. So it's like kind of like what we talked about the last call or last episode, which is, hey, if you're investing in anything right now, make sure that they have a war chest, make sure that they do have enough runway to sustain themselves as a community through the next bear market, or through the current bear market, I should say. So it sounded like Bored Ape is the community at large is well equipped to do that, and that they haven't necessarily been absent. They've actually been doing a lot of licensing, a lot of deals, that they're not just kind of sitting on their laurels and waiting for the next bull market to come. So that seems to be encouraging from that perspective. Are there any other projects that you're looking at that are NFT wise that you're like, that's interesting, that's novel, that's new, that could be interesting?
I mean, I would just say also, if you're going to invest, like, make sure you feel like you'll get something out of the community. Like, make sure you're there to network. Make sure you're there to talk about what you're up to and see how you can incorporate yourself. Like, that's usually the main benefit from a community. If you can't really squeeze anything out of it, then there's no point in being there. At the very least, make some friends.
Yeah, I think also that's important, not to just go in with a financial incentive, right? So is there anything beyond a financial incentive that resonates with you in a particular community? I think that's an important criteria to consider as you're investing in any sort of NFT, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Also, big news, the Cyberkongs, who sort of paved the way for a lot of things. The first NFT to create a coin to go along with them. The first one to like produce babies and a bunch of other stuff. So they've been sort of being they've been like the trailblazers of like 2020 and so on in NFTs. But they just came out with their second, or I guess third NFT collection. Let's call it the fourth, because the first is the Genesis Kongs, then we got the babies, then we got the VX Kongs, and now we have Genkai. So Genkai is like a collection of 20,000 apes with like just sort of a different art style. It's like a kind of an anime art style for the apes. And they just minted for like 0.25, and they minted out earlier today. So
interesting.
yeah, I'm excited to see the reveal. Anyone who owned apes gets like an airdrop. So that's sort of like, opening up their next phase, which seems like it's going to be content around a TV show, maybe something incorporated with a game as well. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I know that they've been sort of, in their own way, providing value by expanding their IP throughout the bear market. So they, made different sprites, incorporated into different other Web3 games, showed up at conferences, onboarded like new people to the ecosystem. This has been majorly their focus, and they're just heads down building, and feel grateful for the war chest that they have.
Awesome. You mentioned apes, but did you mean Kongs? Like, so if somebody owns a Kong, they get actually.
Yeah, I did mean Kong, the Cyber Kongs. So many different types of monkeys. The last project I'd mentioned is Meme Land. So everyone's just sort of eagerly awaiting the meme coin drop. So we've gone through a few phases of receiving our captain's NFTs, waiting for them to turn into babies, and now they're all grown up, and you have these sharks and krakens and different types of meme captains. And each one of those, it's rumored, or I think it's been announced, that they're going to get 69% of the meme coin drop, but they're not getting it all at once. They're going to get it. Basically, the first tranche will be like a third of that amount. So 23% will be airdropped. And then right away, there'll probably be incentives to spend that meme coin on like traits, because right now we have traitless NFTs, more or less. He has like a library of free traits, and they're going to be doing brand partnerships to bring in like other traits, which, you know, they'll have rare ones which you can buy up front, and that'll be the incentive against just sort of dumping your meme coin when it finally does drop. And then it'll probably be vesting for like 2 or 3 years for the rest of that that meme coin for those captains. So yeah, meme coin's the other like big kid on the block that's getting a lot of attention. So, you know, eagerly awaiting.
Yeah, interesting execution of tokenomics, as we talked about tokenomics recently in the last episode. So I think that's an interesting kind of dynamic in how they're manipulating that or incentivizing that. So speaking of another new coin that came out, and actually this is in the realm of digital identity, but Worldcoin, right, which was actually spawned by, I believe, Worldcoin, spawned by what the co-founder or the founder of OpenAI, Sam Altman, right? So this created a lot of controversy because it's like has to do with like, you know, biometric data and you know, the storing of that data. So want to throw it out to the guys, you know, what are your thoughts on this whole Worldcoin thing? Is it as controversial as it's being led to believe, as we're being led to believe, or is it something as kind of a big nothing burger?
So I mean, from the idea side of things, I'm not going to talk too much about the tokenomics, but the idea, I think it's fantastic. It's this concept that there is a need, an ever-growing need to recognize humans and differentiate us from artificial intelligence. In the past, being intelligent was the only thing you needed to prove that you're human, because, well, machines were not as intelligent as to pass, you know, like the different kinds of tests to see if you are like a real human talking, right? Now that has changed, and it will continue to get like worse. So like, hey, how do we differentiate if somebody's human or not? This was one of the approaches. There's been like multiple experiments in the past. For example, proof of humanity. Well, there were like many different ideas. And I think it's the privacy side, it's blown over proportion. So what it does actually is it scans your iris, which sounds the scary part, right? But it doesn't actually store information about your iris. What it does is that with the randomization of your iris, it generates like a private key. Imagine it like that, like a private code that is like an identifier that well, you're unique and you're human. But it doesn't store information about you, who you are, your nationality, how old you are. I mean, you could essentially be like 15 and do this. If the guys scanning you, they don't realize anything like that. I did it. I liked it. I mean, it was, of course, not a painful experience at all. And you just go to an orb, which is a very simple machine, which, by the way, is open source, so you can verify that nothing is being stored there, that how it works, everything. You just look at that like the same way that when you create your Apple, you know, like password with your facial recognition, is very similar. And once you do, well, you have essentially, you have like a certificate that says, hey, you're human and you're recognized as unique. And that's it. You belong to the registry. What are we going to do with that? I do not know. What I do know is that from FCC in Paris, the hackathon of different dApps that were developed, like 53 of them, they actually integrated the Worldcoin ID into their systems. I'm sure they must have had an incentive to do something like that. But I'm very excited. I'm all up for Worldcoin.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where did you find the orb station? How did you find your station?
So Argentina, Argentina is the second country with the widest adoption of cryptocurrency in the world, mostly because our high inflation rate. And there was a previous experiment in Argentina that was called Proof of Humanity. That was very popular, where if you essentially logged into this like humanity like registry that you prove that you're human, you would receive a token called UBI, which is called Universal Basic Income. And at one point in time, UBI was worth more than the pension that all people would get in Argentina and in Venezuela. Those were like the two countries that this happened. So a lot of people like essentially signed up for it. And now there are like 8 orb stations around the country.
That's awesome.
There was one 3 blocks away.
Was it a big lineup for you?
No, because I went very early. Okay. So but no, and it was a little sad because I feel like the guy that they hired to do like the scannings and to get people to scan, like he had no idea about what he was doing. Like they just taught him to like press a button and make the person look straight into the camera. He had no idea what he was doing.
How many Worldcoin did you get for signing up?
I mean, I get 1 per week plus the bonus that they release, which is 25 Worldcoins, right? And it's a very, very interesting like tokenomics point. Maybe BJ, you can like expand on that. But they sign up a lot of people thanks to that bonus.
Yeah, so there are different angles that we can take this at Worldcoin. I do believe that there is going to be someone who needs to solve the identification. Identification is a big market. It's probably the identity verification is probably a $10 billion market globally, and identity as an industry itself is probably maybe 20 billion or so, right? That's the entire identity market. Now, there have been other attempts to do this. Civic, which was one of the projects that launched probably around 2016 or so. And at one point, they had close to $1 billion valuation, which will be 10% of the entire identity market just in crypto, right? So again, just focusing on the value of what is happening right now. If you look at the fully diluted value of Worldcoin, it's currently trading around 20 billion. That's almost twice the size of the entire market for ID coin, which means that they need to execute perfectly for the next how many ever years without making any mistakes in order to deliver that value. And I don't know if that is highly unlikely. So setting aside the valuation side of it, I think it's like overvalued. But let's focus on what we can learn from it and what are some areas where they did really well. First part is that they did a really good job of distribution, right? They got their tokens. They gave the tokens away for people whoever are able to verify. And the method itself is controversial of how they are storing the information. And they were able to have a wide distribution, right? Like really good job on the distribution side of it. Second, on the market making, really interesting mechanism. They have loaned market makers 70% of the initial circulating supply. So the initial circulating supply, 70% of it is sitting with market makers, and it's sitting as a loan, right? They didn't sell it to them. They've just loaned it to them. And I think it's a double-edged sword. If you are loaning money to someone, and if they have a huge amount of it, guess what? Do you want to pay back you're going to pay back the loan in terms of the same commodity? So if I'm borrowing 1 million tokens from you, you have a built-in incentive for the value of the token to go down, right? Because you want to pay back the 1 million token loan. If the token is trading at $10 right now, you have to pay back the $10 million loan. If the token is trading for $3, then you only have to pay $3 million back, right? So the incentive for the market makers are not aligned. Second, they got 5 market makers, unprecedented in the whole crypto space. Even Ape coin, when they launched, they just had 1 market maker, because typically you don't use more than 1 market maker. Worldcoin used 5 market makers. And typically these market makers charge anywhere from $250K to $1 million, and they take 1% of the tokens. So because they had raised a lot of money, they were able to pay all these market makers. Another kind of a flag, are the incentives aligned for everyone? Regulatory compliance, they did a great job. They didn't allow anyone in the US to touch these coins. And we don't know whether it's security, whether it's utility. They kind of went step aside all of that question by making it not available to anyone in the US. And they also have like a bigger vision. If you look at the tokenomics, it's a 10 billion supply. Right now it's trading, I don't know, for $2 or so. The market cap is 20 billion. And it's going to be released over the next 15 years, right? It shows like the long-term vision of where they are going with the project. So those are some of the great things that you can learn from Worldcoin. And I personally believe that this is overvaluated. I would guess their market size may be $1 billion at the most, which would be 10% of the entire ID verification market. And at 20 billion, right, more than it's ridiculous that they are more than 100% of the ID verification market cap right now when they don't even have much usage.
What would you say? You mentioned controversial. The way that they store the data is controversial, VJ. What would you say about that is controversial?
The ethos of people in the crypto community is for us being able to have ownership, right? It's about freedom. And by launching this, they have now an iris database of a large number of people in the world. What is the data going to be used for? Who's using the data? All of that is not very clear. How is the data stored? There is not much clarity around how that information is stored and the purpose for which the data is going to be used for. We saw what happened with 23andMe, right? Like, when they originally launched, they said, hey, all your data, it's safe with us. And some other company came and bought them out. And the new company said, guess what? We're going to use all your genetic data for other purposes and commercialize it. So it becomes the whole question of who owns the data, what is the data used for, how is the data being monetized, and how are the people who own the data, what is the guarantee that the data is going to be secure? So that's the controversy behind it.
Yeah, I love it. There's been so many companies that are like, yeah, we're making a database for ID, like join us. And it's like, no one gets any traction. And it's just like, oh, prove that you're human. The robots are here. And everyone's like, line me up, queue me up, let's go. And so it's kind of like a backdoor into actually, building that ID system for, having a universal login.
Could be. I mean, it is true. Something that I noticed was that there were other people that essentially were getting the ID, and they were just doing it for the money. And if you think about it, hey, like $30 is not a lot of money, which is, well, a little bit more, like $40, $50 is not a lot of money, but it is to some people, especially in certain countries, right? So one thing that I noticed was that they were actually, like, while I was like waiting to do this, they were like advertising it. So it wasn't just like a station where you would go to do this, but there were like recruiters that would basically, if they see you like looking at them, they would say like, hey, you want to like make $50? And that was a little bit sketchy. I didn't like that. But so it was like, if they saw someone looking, they're like, okay, download the app and look straight into the camera and you'll get $50. And that was not appropriate in my opinion, because you should like warn the people, to know what they're about to do, even though I think it's not that big of a deal. But like, it was very, very advertisement like, very military recruitment like.
Interesting. Well, one final comment on that. Go ahead. What were you going to say, VJ? Go for it.
There is also a lot of movies, right? There was what is the movie with Harrison Ford, Blade Runner, right?
Blade Runner, yeah.
Blade Runner, they have the iris scan. That's how you're able to distinguish whether you're a human or not.
Yeah.
I still don't know, right? It can be a good kind of a thing in the movies. Iris scan, and I don't know much about the technology, and I don't know how easy it is to replicate or duplicate it. And there is also, what was the other one with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes? They also
TV Running Man.
Demolition Man, right? Demolition Man. There's Mission Impossible. They use the iris scanner, and what is the movie in which they pull out somebody's eye socket and then they go and and use the scanner?
Was it that you would actually get glasses to see the truth? It was
Minority Report, where they.
Oh yeah,
no, it wasn't that one. It was another one. Never mind. But yeah, it's very.
So anyway, there is like plenty of these Hollywood movies where we all know what's going to happen if you have iris scanner for ID, right? If you have your thumbprint, the worst that could happen is someone can cut off your thumb. You can still operate with the remaining 9 fingers. If you use iris scanner, you go to Argentina and you mess around with the wrong people.
No,
Your
but
eye socket is gone.
yeah, but you know that if you actually like take out an eye socket, the iris doesn't work anymore. Essentially, it dies, and it dies like in 5 seconds or something like that. That's what I saw.
What I'm wondering is why, how and why.
So they need to torture you alive for you to like see into something, or they need to cut your head off.
Mariano's been running in some suspect circles down there in Buenos Aires. I'm a little bit worried about you. So, and I'm also worried the fact that even though I'm not interested in participating in WorldCoin right now, that I can't because I'm a U.S. citizen. So that kind of stings me a little bit.
But that's a cool thing. So you don't have to choose, right? So you don't need to worry if you think that something bad is going to happen, because you just don't have a chance.
Yeah, I just have the SEC looking out for my best interests. You know, so it's kind of,
Yeah, I heard they're mostly signing up people in like developing countries because
poor countries.
Yeah, mainly because of that financial incentive. So that makes sense. Like that, their numbers are so inflated. Everyone's like, sure, give me $30. That's amazing.
So in other news, we had the Fed raise interest rates this week, another quarter point. What's the 11th consecutive rate raise over the last year and a half, year and change. So now we're sitting at 5.25 to 5.5 on the federal funds rate, and so we saw the market kind of do what it did. So VJ, do you have any? I know you've kind of evaluated this and done a little bit of a deeper dive into what this means for the overall market. Have any comments on that specifically?
So the economic data points to an economic slowdown, right? It's pretty much inevitable. And we are, if you look at over the last 12 months, people have been talking about a recession. And if you look at the technical definition of recession, recession is 2 quarters back to back of declining GDP. So if you have 2 quarters consecutively where GDP declines, then that's the technical definition of recession. And if you look at the GDP of growth in third quarter of Q3 of 2022 was 3.2%. Q4 was 2.6, and then earlier this year, Q1 of 2023 was 2%. So technically, we have had 2 quarters of declining GDP. So we are in a technical recession. However, the Fed says that they are not in a recession, and don't know about that because it requires a lot of smart people, PhD in economics, to determine whether we are in a recession or not. So that is, we are already seeing a decline in the GDP numbers, and the Fed has raised the interest rate is the highest in the last 22 years. But at the same time, the markets have not reacted in the way that a lot of experts, including myself, predicted of what's going to happen in this particular market. So we are in really interesting times where the Fed is raising interest rate. However, it hasn't impacted the market that much, and probably because one theory is around the buffer, and the buffer has reduced, but it hasn't gone down to zero. And what I mean by that is during the COVID, with all this money printing that was happening, consumers were holding 2.5 trillion in excess saving in their in savings, right? So they had the 2.5 trillion. Now the 2.5 trillion has come down to 1.5 trillion, and this is based on analytics published by Moody. And when we get to zero is when we will actually see the impact. So we went from 2.5 trillion to 1.5. So we still have this another 1.5 trillion in buffer. When that buffer evaporates, we'll see what happens in the market.
That's an interesting perspective. I also had listened in and got access to some data recently about as it relates to the commercial real estate market, right? So a lot of the office, a lot of multifamily, a lot of different sectors within commercial real estate, they had the benefit of lower rates for the last 3, 4, 5 years. But now a lot of those adjustable rate mortgages are getting re-rated later on this year. And a lot of them are not going to be able to refinance, right? So if you're your investor holding onto a large Class A, office building in a downtown metropolitan area somewhere, and you cannot refinance, that's going to lead to some restructurings, or really the asset just going back to the bank. So that paper is just going to be worth nothing. And so an inability to really do that, and a lot of those mortgages are due to be refinanced later this year, and you're gonna refinance it at twice the rate. You got it in at 3%, now you're refinancing at 7%. Not going to happen, because the economics haven't improved that much to where you can actually afford to cover the net operating income, or your net operating income is not going to be adequate to cover the debt service ratio on that. So those assets are going to go back to the bank. That could actually lead to something as well too. So we need to be
on top of that, banks are also kind of taking a step back in terms of lending. Because of what we saw, we saw the deposit run that happened with SVB and several regional banks. So banks are dialing down on the lending side of it. At the same time, we are in an inverted yield curve. An inverted yield curve right now, typically interest rates are higher for longer term bonds. If you're loaning money to someone for a longer period of time, you're taking higher risk. So you need to get paid a higher amount. So longer dated bonds have higher interest rate, and shorter dated bonds have lower interest rate. When yield curve inversion happens, the other way around, right? When all the short-term bonds, the treasury bills, right now they are paying almost 5-6% compared to 10-year bonds, and this has been going on for some time. So you have the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, has been declining. However, core inflation is still hot. It's still at 4.8%. The Fed target is at 2%. But regardless, we have had a massive shift in terms of interest rate, 5,000% increase, steepest raise in interest rate, and it is like turning a very large tanker, right? The Jerome Powell is the captain of the boat. He just did a hard right and turned the ship. However, for the ship itself to turn, it's going to take some time. You're going to see a lag of maybe 18 months, maybe a year, 2 years for us to feel the impact of it. And even one of the Fed governors, I forgot his name, he was also saying the same thing, that we're going to see it's going to take 18 months to 24 months for us to feel the impact of this steep rise in interest rate.
What I find to be interesting is that you have a Fed governor that is aware of that, and then they continue to raise rates in lieu of all that, right? So we've had the fastest raising rate cycle in history. Where we're at, you'd think that maybe we might want to just hold off a couple more, opportunities, right? Of Fed meetings. Let's just hold off. We've got it to where we're at. Let's hold off a little bit. Don't want to necessarily break something. We got another year before the impact of this specific rate hike actually is felt in the marketplace, felt in the economy. So it really doesn't look good from that perspective. That especially with the CRE, the commercial real estate market where it's at, and then a lot of those loans are actually held by regional banks. So we've already gone through the Silicon Valley thing, and that had the impact that it did have. Imagine if we had 3, 4, 5, or 6 more of those. Can the market sustain something like that? And what other kinds of consequences will that have should something like that occur? So these are all we're kind of an uncharted territory. I feel like that we're being led into a rate hiking cycle.
Agreed. And it reminds me of movies, right? If you're watching a James Bond movie, and the bomb has couple of hours to detonate, James Bond comes and detonates the bomb. What's the thrill in that, right? Oh, it's already got 2 hours more for the bomb to go off. But if James Bond comes and detonates the bomb with 5 seconds to go, or 1 second to go, then you have a movie. Then it makes it very thrilling. So Jerome Powell has no incentive to detonate the bomb right now. He has to wait until the tension builds up, then detonate the bomb.
You were
Defuse the bomb.
a very creative individual, VJ. I can now honestly say I've never heard anybody connect Jerome Powell to James Bond. So that's profound, brother. Pretty excited.
Yeah, Jerome Powell. Yeah, I think he can play the next James Bond.
He's data dependent. Oh my goodness. So it's also led to a little bit of Bitcoin volatility. We're now, hugging down below 30,000, which was 30,000 was a key level. But any comments on the Bitcoin price, and as Bitcoin goes, the rest of the market by and large goes. So that's why we'll just kind of focus on the Bitcoin price at the moment. But we've seen a little bit of a retracement from the 30,000 where everybody was starting to get excited. Oh, to the moon, we're going back, bull market back on. So in lieu of some of this monetary policy, do you see more of a retrace in the short term, or are we still? Is this bull market back on?
Yeah, I mean, we've been holding that 30K support for quite a while, so it's definitely disappointing to see it go below 30K. But we have sort of like a downward flag, and usually those are bullish signals. We might pop up above 30K again in the short term, but I'm not too sure if we'll hold it for that long past that. So,
anybody else, Mariano or VJ?
I mean, the fundamentals haven't changed, and I don't think I cannot see essentially a reason on why we'll go up again. But I mean, I'm actually hoping it doesn't go up again, because I am expecting it to go lower to get into it again.
So you got some cash on the sidelines that you're waiting to deploy.
Yeah, no, I'm liquid on 90%.
Well, it's because you just made all that money on Worldcoin. You got like 30 bucks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's actually the smartest investment you can do with Worldcoin, because you get passive income every week. You get 1 coin.
In Argentina, dude, that's got to cover your eggs and your
insurance,
bread,
electricity, everything.
Yeah. Roof over your head.
He can buy a penthouse apartment overlooking the beach.
Yeah, he paid for it with his retina. Yeah, all he needed was a retina. So, well, that is fantastic. I think that's gonna.
Yeah,
VJ.
Bitcoin has been holding the price at the same level. There are a lot of miners who went out of business. We saw a tremendous increase in funding that happened in the last bull run. And all that mining that went towards all the funding that went towards the mining companies, they went out and bought all the mining hardware, and the mining hardware where it was selling at a premium up to 100%. And when the price of Bitcoin crashed, these companies were not able to sustain their operation, and they had to sell out. So right now there is an excess inventory of mining hardware in the market. And because of that, the price of the mining hardware is artificially low. And there has been accumulation going on, and the miners are also selling at the same time. And because of that, we are seeing the volatility. Volatility is a measure of how much price deviates from the mean value for Bitcoin. And volatility is at a historical low. We have, there is the Deribit Volatility Index. There is also the Crypto Volatility Index, which measures the volatility for the entire market. It's similar to the VIX index for the stock market. And both of them are at historical lows. I think it's more like a coil spring. The more the volatility reduces, it's like loading it up. And when things crack, the volatility is going to increase. What does it mean? It means that we're going to see some drastic price movements for the price of Bitcoin in the near future. And don't know the direction, but just the volatility is going to increase pretty soon.
Well, if it is anything like the VIX, right? The VIX, they call it a volatility indicator. but the volatility is really it's just based on when the price goes down, right? So like it spikes when the price goes down. So it's almost like an inverse of the S&P 500, for instance. So it'll be interesting because actually that's what is interesting is the fact that the VIX and the stock market had been in like an all-time low, not all-time low, but very, very low for a very, very long period of time. And it literally just spiked over the last couple of days. So interesting how those two markets are kind of mirroring one another. You know, if that actually comes to fruition, if we do see some volatility in Bitcoin and crypto overall over the next coming days. So, you know, in summation, be on the lookout for that, right? So be on the lookout for any sort of short-term volatility. If you're in any high-flying stuff right now and you're in profits, maybe consider taking some cream off the top. If you made your $30 on Worldcoin, maybe take some cream off the top.
Get that cheddar.
Yeah, get that cheddar.
I don't know what I'm going to do with the money. It needs to be something symbolic, you know, like something not anti-Worldcoin, something like that. It's like, thanks for the money, and I'm invested on something anti-Worldcoin. I short the coin with the money of the coin.
You might be able to get a pack of gum here in the United States. So,
yeah, let's go.
So, well, I want to thank everyone for coming to episode number 4 of the Bitbrain podcast.